On tonight's episode of the Talkin TV podcast, we've got a double feature for you guys. We're going to be talking about the two giant new movies that dropped this past weekend, that being Raya and the Last Dragon for premium subscription on Disney Plus, and coming to America on Amazon. I'm Dom the Movie Nerd.
I am Chris the TV Nerd. I'm all sorts of messed up right now, guys.
I can tell.
But we'll get into that.
We've got a lot to talk about and more exclusively for you guys on tonight's show. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
I wish I could say I was doing better, man.
Yeah. Today was today was a little bit of a depressing day. I mean, look, not for us personally, like just for what we've accomplished so far, because I mean, we busted our asses last week and it showed.
Yeah, we did, man. Last week was a great week for the channel. We're so close to 300 subscribers. Everything in life was finally perfect for once. We have this amazing community on YouTube that I'm just eternally grateful for, and then the bombshell of all bombshells drops on my little tiny personal bubble, and I'm just a little sad. I'm gonna bring it tonight. Like, I have a lot to say about these two movies we're talking about, you know, obviously coming to America and Raya and the Last Dragon, but I would be remiss if I didn't say rest in peace to one of my favorite little sitcoms of all time, Kim's Convenience.
I mean, I'm not gonna say that the timing definitely was a little bit too bro, we just had two people from the show on. They're hyping it up. We know the two of the stars are now in Disney's pocket, and then the creators pull the plug. So, unfortunately, before we, at the risk of making this entire episode another Kim's Convenience episode, we wanted to say at the beginning, shout out, rest in peace, Kim's Convenience. Another show that is a victim of the cancellation before it's finished syndrome that seems to have been a cause, just coming after our favorite shows. But
hold on, you're not saying we're cursed, are you?
I usually reserve that for 3 times. Three times for me is when that's the sign. But look, all I'm saying is that the problem is that it's not even like the major shows that it's hitting. It's all of our favorite cult hit niche shows. And then right as they're on the precipice of finally getting recognized, it's like, boom, that's when the axe drops. That is what kills me more than anything else. And the fact that we saw it last year during the Corona pandemic with Glow, where Netflix fucking scapegoated the fuck out of that show and used it as an excuse to cancel it. And now you got this. At the very least, it was slightly, I guess, more well put, and that the creators have just, moved on to another product. I'm just assuming the fact that, again, Simu is Shang-Chi and Paul is now in Mandalorian, and I assume that he will probably end up having a bigger part in the Rangers of the New Republic show.
So Simu put something out on his Instagram, but I want to just save this part of the conversation for Friday night, our 300 subscriber celebration live stream.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because I got a lot of info on all the different people's posts on it, but I don't want to take away from
I'm glad that you brought that up, but yeah, so we will save that for Friday night, but people, again, before we actually dive into tonight's topic, again, we are so eternally grateful for, once again, the community coming through. As always, people, we're 4 away from 300 subscribers. We are going to be by 300 subscribers. That's 4. We are going to be at 300 subscribers by the end of the week. And so on Friday, we will be going live in order to celebrate our 300 subscribers, as well as it's a little bit of a double celebration, a little bit. It's not the exact date, but this month, March, marks the 1-year anniversary that we've been on YouTube, which is still crazy to think about because I'm still convinced that it's stuck inside a time loop, because as far as I'm concerned, it's still March of 2020. Chris, I'm not even kidding. The other day, I was at my job. A person literally said that her license was expired. I was looking at it. I looked at the numbers that said March of 2020, and I was still convinced, that's only a few days away. It's good. Because in my mind, it was still 2020, even though I consciously knew that it was 2021. That's how messed up my brain is because of the whole Corona time lockdown thing.
Yeah, no, I hear that, man. It's going to take some time to adjust for sure. But the one thing I will say about, Friday night, man, I mean, it's going to be a good show, guys.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, bring topics, bring things for us to talk about. We don't really know what's going to happen. You guys know how our live streams go. We're just going to chat it out, and hopefully you guys come and celebrate, because you're as much a part of this as we are. So
Look, I mean, eventually the goal would be that we can just go live whenever we want, just talk about whenever we want, and not feel like we're constantly have to adhere to these fucking giant studios bullying us into reviewing the latest movies. I want to just go live randomly on like a Wednesday night and just talk about like this fucking awesome neon foreign movie that I just watched because it was so cool, and for not having like, for no other reason other than the fact that it's just a really well-made movie, nothing to do with it being an Oscar movie or the latest in the line of Marvel schlock or Star Wars schlock or the latest bullshit from DC or like none of that. I don't want to deal with any of that. I just want to sit down, watch a movie, enjoy it, and have a fun, in-depth conversation about it, you know? And I want to get to that point. And the good news is that with how much, with how kind of like up on the trajectory we've been, specifically in the last couple of, specifically in like the last week alone, like we're definitely getting very, very close to doing that. And we hope to keep giving you guys more of that because look, I don't know about you, Chris, but I kind of just love going live and just chat with the people, you know? I'm really I'm not going to lie. Like, I'll just say it right now. I'm not looking forward to having to talk about Falcon and Winter Soldier for 6 weeks straight and just redo the same Marvel BS. And I'm not
going to say that. I mean, because I personally, I always disagree with you when you say this. I never agree to anything I don't want to do. It's just who I am. I understand that there is sort of a timeliness and a reason to do it as YouTubers, but to be honest, I look forward to covering Disney because I look forward to being the opinion that I can't find anywhere else about Marvel and Disney, so I'm going to completely disagree with you on that because I will never do anything on this channel that I 100% don't believe in. Maybe in the early days we tried that, but we've had those conversations closed doors, and at this point, I don't do that shit anymore, you know?
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. And the thing is, like I said, it's not that I mean, I want to watch it and I want to like see what happens. I guess I'm just not looking forward to reviewing it. That's the problem.
Fair. That is fair.
That's what I mean by it. And I'm like, oh, why can't I just like have something where I know nothing about it going in and just enjoy it and review it afterwards? You know? And it's funny because in a weird way, it does kind of apply to both of these movies that we're reviewing tonight because the first movie that we're going to talk about tonight is a latest, again, kind of counterproductive to that whole statement, but it is another Disney movie, specifically a Disney animated movie, the latest in a long line that we're going to get into with that. But I will say that I was definitely pleasantly surprised by what I saw. And then another movie that, again, just... I think the only reason why I guess I had any anticipation for it is because I think it was originally supposed to come out last year and then it got delayed because of COVID and once it was announced that Amazon was happening. So, I mean, let's just get into it. So, we're talking tonight about Raya and the Last Dragon and Coming to America. I have to constantly put that up because, again, Coming to America is probably the first sequel that I've seen in a while that actually properly utilizes the 2 within the title instead of just calling it Coming to America 2. You know, since the eponymously titled Too Fast, Too Furious, where both of the 2s in that movie's title is the number 2. It's the most incredible sequel title that has ever been designed, and nothing will ever top it. And so both of these movies dropped this weekend. They were both, I guess they were both like pretty big. Like drops because in any other year, obviously, you know, pre-COVID, they would have been like Raya would have come out and it would have made $1 billion like opening weekend, the same way that Zootopia did a couple of years ago. And then Coming to America, again, it's weird because of just like Amazon's strategy, both during and kind of post the pandemic now, and as kind of contrasting this to their strategy previously. So prior to the pandemic, I don't even know if this movie probably would have gone to Netflix. I will say probably. But,
maybe because Eddie Murphy was doing Dolomite and all that type of stuff.
Right, exactly. And like, and I want to talk about Eddie's kind of like comeback and strategy and like kind of what's involved with that because it's really fascinating because it both incorporates a lot of the stuff that he was already doing that already made him famous to begin with, while still like kind of incorporating some of the stuff from like his 2000s run when he was doing all those really, really bad family movies. But I can already see that we got some people in the chat. Our regulars, Luke, Jay, happy to have you guys here.
Yeah, Jay. Thanks for hanging, man. We had a great weekend, dude. Just super relaxing. Had a great time on the panel. As you know, Friday night, some controversy over the CW and all that good stuff.
That was a lot of fun. That was so much fun.
Thanks for asking, man. So, Dom, which one of these 2 movies do you want to get into first? Let's get into something.
So I want to talk about Raya first because I watched this. So I watched this movie. What's it called? So it was really interesting because Disney, even though apparently the internet relentlessly made fun of their release strategy last year with Mulan, with the whole premium release strategy of paying $30 when it's going to be free a couple months later. I laughed at that and thought that was dumb. and wasn't going to work. But I, once again, like I always do, clearly underestimated the love and kind of adoration and obsession, I will say, of millennial parents when it comes to Disney movies, because, oh man, they will shell out however much money when it comes to getting that new Disney stuff. It does not matter. Like, they will go. And Raya is the latest in a line of Disney movies that have come out kind of post the Pixar merger that I would say, I've been saying this like a couple times, really since 2006 when Disney fully bought out Pixar and incorporated those writings out. That to me was the time period where, even though we got like still some great Pixar movies that came out, that was the time period in which it really seemed like the kind of like that brilliance when it came to like the ingenious and creative story ideas and characters kind of shifted from Pixar to Disney. Because in the first half of the 2010s, you saw all these Disney movies coming out that, even though they still exemplified like some of like the kind of the traditionalist Disney animated tropes, you were starting to see like almost like Pixar movies, but as Disney movies. Like when I like to me, the thing that I still admire about Zootopia greatly is the fact that I watched it. I'm like, this is like not a Disney movie. This is a Pixar movie, but it's a Disney animated movie. And I thought the same thing about Wreck-It Ralph, and I thought the same thing about Big Hero 6, and even Tangled to an extent, which even though that was still a kind of a traditional Disney princess musical, that still had like stuff where I'm like, whoa, this is like stuff that I would usually expect from like a Pixar movie. And they kind of got away with that in the second half of the decade. I feel like after kind of the gangbusters year that they had in 2016 with the double release of both Zootopia and Moana, they kind of got away with it. You know, Pixar kind of made its comeback with Coco, and Disney put out 2 more kind of mediocre sequels, testing the waters with Wreck-It Ralph 2 and Frozen 2. But then, so the trailer for this came out, and this was originally going to come out last year, obviously pre the pandemic. And already off the bat, the first thing that I noticed about the trailer was like, oh my God, their animation just keeps getting better and better. Like, I've heard from people who have been in the rooms when some of the more advanced animated techniques were being applied, and this is across the board, not just with Disney, because I know DreamWorks was doing this. They did this with the most recent How to Train Your Dragon movie, and obviously we saw it with Pixar, with Soul. Just like, their animation is getting so good to the point where it really is hitting that, like, uncanny valley point of, like, is this like it's starting to look realistic? So, like, can you comment on that? Only because I know that you're not as big an animated and like a Disney animated fan as I am, but like, I mean, even you've got to notice that like this shit is getting like really, really uncanny as far as how good it's getting.
Yeah, no, I noticed it with Zootopia. I think, you know what's funny? I'm not the biggest sort of traditional American animation fan in regards to like the kids medium, but these recent Disney films, granted I haven't seen Moana, that's on my my bucket list for sure, but Zootopia is in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. I will unapologetically say that. I love that movie, just not even, you know, it's not even just a guilty pleasure. I love that film. Don't at me if you disagree. But I think a lot of people think it's a great film. And with Raya as well, I mean, the animation was breathtaking, man. It was the stuff of inspiration is what I wrote down in my notes. I was just sort of reviewing it as you were about to segue me in here. And it just, yeah, it not only does it look stunning, not only does it feel real, but it looks so lived in. It's amazing to me how they're able to take these environments and make, like, the grass looks like you can water it and it will grow. I mean, like the bugs, the creatures, the way they move, their mannerisms are all just so, I can't describe it, so ethereal and so like their animation is starting to transcend the genre and, like you said, become something special and in a league of its own. And it's actually really incredible to watch. And I think it's actually making me more of a fan of traditional children's animation. And it's crazy to say that these films aren't even Pixar films that I'm talking about.
Right.
These are just regular Disney animation. That's the part that blows my mind.
It's honestly kind of insane because because that to me was the whole thing. Like the crazy thing is like I said, the 2000s was arguably like the worst decade for Disney because I mean that was like all their underrated hits and they like maybe had like a few hits. Like Lilo and Stitch gained like a cult status later on, right? And Atlantis the Lost Empire kind of gained a cult status later on. But like you don't see people talking about Meet the Robinsons or Bolt or Chicken Little or Home on the Range or not even Princess and the Frog the way that they talk about those Disney classics like Lion King, like Aladdin, like even Tarzan. Like people know more about Tarzan than they do about any of those 2000s Disney movies, right?
Well, that Phil Collins score definitely helps.
Yeah, of course. But here's my counterpoint to that is it didn't say Brother Bear. Brother Bear had
that is such a good point.
Score. And nobody talks about that one, like, at all. But I really, really feel like I started to notice it with Wreck-It Ralph, where I'm like, this is a Disney movie, but this doesn't feel like a Disney movie. And I feel like with Raya, what we've seen now is this is kind of, though I feel like the way that Soul was kind of the come full circle capitulation moment for Pixar and everything that they've been like, all the storytelling devices and tropes that they've been kind of doing since the first Toy Story. I feel like Raya, in a weird way, and I'm assuming that that's just because that's at the point where I'm at in my life right now as far as how long I've been watching this stuff. Like, I've watched almost every single Disney animated movie there is throughout my childhood. And even up until now, I'm even still catching up on a few that I haven't missed. Like, I just actually rewatched Fox and the Hound. That movie hits you in a way that no other Disney movie does. But Raya truly does feel like the capitulation of, like, because you know what it is? It's a Disney princess movie, but it's got like a typical MacGuffin like quest and story structure, but it's got like arguably like probably the most humanized villains, if you could even call them that. It's got like the getting the scrappy band together and like picking up the a new character on each destination that I honestly haven't seen in a movie in a while. It's got the typical Disney animated sidekick. It's got the typical Disney animated ending, but there is just such a richness and a texture and kind of understanding about this story and what they're doing that I'm like, yeah, like Disney has always been incredible when it comes to detail, but this kind of detail is stuff that I would really expect from a Pixar movie. And like, again, just how deep into Chinese lore and just, you know, Asian lore in general that they went as far as like where they drew the inspiration from and the designs for all of the creatures and how I have to assume that every single one of those creatures that's in this movie is based off of either a real life animal design or or one of the many fables that came out of Asian lore. And that part in and of itself was fascinating to me, you know? And obviously it's helped by the incredible animation, but it just to me reinforces, I guess, what it is that I love about Disney movies growing up, while at the same time kind of doing what I feel like these last couple Disney movies have been doing really well, which is incorporating a lot of the modern day kind of sensibilities into kind of these classic fabled stories. I don't think it works all the time, but when it works in instances like this, it really does craft for like some absolutely incredible movies. And to me, this is the stuff that constantly reminds me why it is that I still like Disney and I still like some of the storytelling that I've done, is that aside from the Marvel and the Star Wars BS, this is their bread and butter. And this is the reason why they have continued to dominate throughout the last almost 100 years of their existence now.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, this is a great reminder of be hard on Disney, because they're capable of the good writing that I was preaching about on the Friday night WandaVision live stream. Like, this is it. This is your example. If you guys want to know what was Chris talking about, I mean, the writing was good. No, it wasn't. This is good writing, because here's what this story really is. And so it's actually really amazing right now, because not only am I writing a radio play that is centered around the hero's journey, this movie is the hero's journey. And I'm taking a class right now that's the hero's journey. So I'm so into this Joseph Campbell sort of zeitgeisty thing, sort of reemerging in pop culture. And so I was sort of picking this apart just subconsciously at this point. And it's the hero's journey, but all good hero's journey stories have something that makes them stand out, because it's a very easy format to write. You know, I'm an aspiring writer. I'm not a writer yet, but I mean, I'm taking the first leap into writing with the hero's journey, because it's just the payoff can be there. But as I'm writing and as I'm sort of working on my script, I'm learning that, yeah, but here's the thing. George Lucas might have made it look really easy. Raya might have made it look really easy, but it's actually more complicated than it seems, because you're introducing a new world. So one of the things that I think Raya really did well was, first of all, they didn't hearken into one sort of section of Asian culture. They kind of just made it a little more sort of vague, because this isn't really our Earth. This is a different type of Earth. You know, they're trying to achieve Kamundra again, which is essentially the one dragon, the one unified nation where there's no quarrel, where there's no grief, there's nothing nasty like we have in our society. And that's very much like the social message under this film. And I actually really think it's a sweet message. I think it's a really great message to give to children. You know, look past the differences, because there is one thing that connects us and combines us and molds us together, and it's our humanity. And so that's why I also think the mentor figure that she finds, right? The dragon, I forget her name, but played by Aquafina. It's so powerful, because it's taking someone that isn't a human to show her that her humanity is what ties them all together. And so that it's so silly that they're fighting. And yes, this is simple, but as we see this film unfold, the way that they are able to give us this exposition, there's no fat. They introduce the 5 nations in kind of like a movie trailer style way in the beginning, where they have the panels come up one by one. But it's like, okay, nation, elevator pitch, 1 sentence, and then of course Daniel Day Kim's character, I think it was what was the name, Bo or something?
Benju, I think.
Benju, the father figure to Raya, does an amazing job of exposition without sort of making it boring and without drowning you. So this film really impressed me because like the steps here are drag and drop, copy and paste. But what they do with it is so masterful. It's like that Dan Harmon story circle we were just talking about when we were hanging out Saturday night. It really is. So we can break that down and get more into yes, Pangea is Kumandra. But that's to me what's so beautiful about this, because you're giving kids the oldest story of all time, the hero's journey, but you're managing to weave in so many new elements and such an important social message without any of it being blatantly in your face. So
I love that you're bringing all this up, because this is literally the stuff that I've been trying to tell people like since I got out of school, which is that it's like, why do you think that those old Greek fables and those old Greek stories are still fascinating to us hundreds of thousands of years later? It's because the story steps work. And because guess what? If you look at stories with structure as opposed to stories without structure, what are the ones that are going to last longer, and what are the ones that people gravitate more so towards? The ones with structure. And even though the internet is trying to break down this idea that, no story works because every story has been done and they're all predictable. Nah. That's bullshit. Because if you want an example of how the oldest story structure in the world can still create for some absolutely incredible stories, then look no further than this movie. Because you're right, Chris. This movie is, to a T, the hero's journey. Quite literally. This is Hero of 1,000 Faces meets Hero's Journey, meets all of that stuff. And I love also that you brought up the message kind of that Sisu the Dragon, voiced by Awkwafina. And again, like, a probably like really transformative performance, because going into this movie, like, you want to talk about like the modern sensibilities that I was talking about before, that's the part specifically with what Awkwafina was doing with that character that I personally thought was going to torpedo the movie. And she ends up like actually being really cool. And like kind of, I guess, her naivete of having not been around for hundreds of years and still thinking that like human beings are great and get along with that. You think that it's going to provide a hitch for her at first, but in the end, it ends up like, again, being the thing that saves them and ends up bringing them together. Because even though Raya and what's the name of the of her rival, Namari, are going at each other and ripping each other's throats out in that really cool kind of enemy/frenemy type relationship. We'll get into that in a bit throughout the course of the movie. Like, the kind of their shared connection that they have through Sisu and the magic and the effect that the dragons can have on the world, to me, is the stuff of this movie. And that, to me, is the stuff that gets back to why it is that we love Disney. Because Disney, their strength is always being able to translate these absolutely universal themes that anyone can gravitate towards in a way that can really appeal to anyone. And it really sucks, because the annoying thing is that because their movies have always typically, again, been watched more and enjoyed more by kids, they have been stuck in the box that they are exclusively kids' movies. But I feel like if this particular movie proves anything, it's that these movies are anything but just kids' movies. These movies truly do appeal to everyone. And I think they've personally also been doing a much better job recently of like really incorporating some, like, like there are still their fair share of silly cartoon moments, but like the serious moments of this movie and like some of the serious conversations they have, like I really enjoy, because that's the stuff that's like, yeah, even though this might not be exactly how people talk in real life, like I still need to hear this, and this still has weight, and this still like kind of matters to me, and this makes sense, and like I know it's really tough, because again, not every movie can be made like this. It's impossible, but it's just so nice and refreshing when we can get a movie where the script is actually well done and the story is actually well thought out, and it has detail, and it has that great message, and it has these great characters. See, this is what I mean when I talk about that every great movie has an underlying message, I think that's kind of been conflated and confused by other people on the internet and saying that, we just need to keep politics out of our entertainment, and that, like, I'm a firm believer in that, but that's not what this is here. Like, not at all.
Totally. I'm going to retort that in a second here. Really not retort that, because I agree with you, but we got to shout out some people in the chat. Eastbound, Dom, I'm assuming that's one of your homies,
yes,
and Stranger Boy as well. Stranger Boy, my friend, thanks for hanging down. We're up to 298 subscribers as we're going live here. The momentum is high, and I want to bring it back to Sisu.
Yes.
Okay, because you raised a great point about Sisu. She easily could have tanked the movie. And when I first saw her, I was very, very nervous and very scared. Not because the animation wasn't brilliant and very interesting. I actually really thought the animation was really brilliant. Not that I'm historically, versed in that type of realm, but there's traditional Shintoism where they have these street fairs to worship some of their gods, and animism as well of all those cultures of Japan, and it kind of looked like those sort of like dragons that they would fly on the kites. Like it harkened back to that, which I thought was cool, but it was so broad where like all Asian cultures could kind of, it didn't limit itself to one, which I think is also one of the beauty of this movie, not diving too deep into one specific cultural background, because the message is about coming together as one human people. But Sisu, right? She's sort of the character that propagates that message. She's sort of the character that sees through all the bad in people and only finds the good. But she also, at first, could have been very, very annoying. She comes out, and her first joke when she turns into human form is about her butt being closer to her head. And that was when I said to myself, oh, so they had to do this type of humor to appease the rating system, and that's unfortunate. And I thought it was going to be an issue throughout the film. Thank God it wasn't, because I really came out enjoying this one. But there is some lowbrow humor in this movie that I kind of think steps on its toes a little bit, and I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, the lowbrow humor for me, look, I will definitely admit that there have been instances where the lowbrow humor, I don't care about it, but it doesn't ruin the movie, and there have been instances where the lowbrow humor completely tanks the movie. But I can thankfully say that usually in the instances where the lowbrow humor tanks and the bad writing and the bad dialogue tanks the movie is usually an instance where the movie was already weak to begin with, right? I can say that. And this was definitely the instance where, yeah, this story was so strong and so fucking good that even the modern day sensibilities and kind of the poop jokes and the butt jokes and all that didn't bother me as much. They were certainly annoying when they started, but this story was so good that I'm like, yeah, I don't care about any of this stuff, and this is not going to drag this movie down for me. You can just tell when you get those types of special movies. You know why? Because even and I'll tell you another reason why it doesn't bother me, because even that, I think back to The Lion King, and I think back to all the jokes that Timon and Pumbaa cracked in Lion King, and I think back to all the weird Rosie O'Donnell random one-liners in Tarzan, and I think back to like what's it called? Like all of Robin Williams' random pop culture references that he cracked in Aladdin that make no sense, but you don't care because it's Robin Williams and he's a genius, in Aladdin. And so this is nothing different that Disney's been doing for years, And their stories are 9 out of 10 times, again, Chicken Little and Home on the Range notwithstanding, their stories are so good and so indelible and so endearing that those just kind of brush off, and like because I know that when I think back to this movie, I'm not going to remember that joke. I'm not going to remember any of the jokes in this movie. I'm going to remember these incredible moments, particularly near the end of the movie when it's the group trying to hold off the horde of those demon things with the remains of the gem. That's the stuff that I'm going to remember from, and them ultimately kind of doing what they do. Obviously, we'll get into spoilers in a little bit in order to stop them. That's the stuff that I'm going to remember from this movie, not any of the fucking jokes.
Yeah, no, but it was danger territory for me.
It was,
at first,
absolutely, but it managed to avoid it.
Because I think like the intro sequence is so special, and just the way that they set the stage is so brilliantly done. I mean, this movie is not only gorgeous from a visual standpoint, but from like a writing standpoint, and of course from a message standpoint that you just don't want to see them mess with that. But hey, I got over it. I wanted to get your opinion on it, and I totally see your points. Something else I was sort of thinking while watching this movie was how we've had films and series that take so long to establish their world, and yet it's still confusing after multiple seasons. How does this film sort of just out of the gates, throw you right in? You understand fully what's going on. You're comfortable. You're not confused. And of course, there's other moments throughout the course of the film where they drop exposition, but they do it so cleverly, where you meet the character Bo, I believe his name is, the little kid whose family got taken by the sort of, underworld demon-y type things that sort of turn you to stone and take your soul. He only stays on the boat because he saw that happen to his parents. And so you get that exposition through them sort of showing you how someone has adapted. And so you say, oh, okay, that's why water's important, because they hint at it, but they don't tell you until it's done in such a cinematic movie way. And yet why does this little children's animation film have what so many other films of our day don't? That's kind of what it's blowing my mind about this.
Because it does the thing that good screenwriting and good storytelling is supposed to do, which is that nothing is put on screen without having intention. I've been watching this hour-long lecture from this professor named Carl Iglesias, and he had this brilliant thing that he said, which is where in movies you should never have a character speak unless they want something. And you should never even have a character unless they have an intention and a goal and they want something. And that to me is what so many screenwriters miss, because you're right. Because so much of the time they have to feel like they have to come up with this extra engorged plot and all of these different things to keep it going, but they forget about the one thing that, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but I don't care, is the thing that drives these things, which is story. And, well, not story, which is character. You have to have well thought out characters. And as far as the whole world building aspect and how this movie basically does the equivalent of about 5 seasons worth of exposition dump within the first 2-3 minutes as far as fleshing out the origin and the history of this world, and they make it look easy. For that, I will read to you a quote that I read on our Mank podcast, which is, again, kind of a little bit of an ode to Citizen Kane, but I feel like it captures this perfectly, which is, you can't capture a man's life in 2 hours. You can only hope to get the impression of one. And that, to me, is, again, the brilliance of storytelling, which is, look, when you know someone fully and you know them inside and out, what happens? You get bored because you know everything that's going to happen. So you have no further continuing interest. That, to me, is the magic of movies and the magic of storytelling. You're not getting the full thing, because if you know again, this is to me part of the reason why the internet has ruined movies, because the internet took those conversations that you would have when you were stoned out of your mind at 1 o'clock in the morning, just talking with your buddies and having those random weird conversations about shit that nobody cared about, and made that shit public and made that shit mainstream. And now and picking apart every single little piece of every single little movie, of course that's going to make movies boring as a result, because that's not what the intention was. Movies are supposed to be there in their moment. You're supposed to get that impression. It's supposed to have that effect on you, and you're supposed to have come away thinking about, not necessarily having had this big life revelation, but having enough of an understanding that it will at the very least impact your understanding of the world. That, to me, is what stories are, and that, to me, is what stories do. It's the fact that it's an illusion. It's a magic trick, right? You're not actually watching anything that's real. And animation is the prime example of that. Because animated movies, you're not watching real people photographed. You're just watching drawings move and hearing people voice them. And you're hearing this incredible ambiance and this incredible sound design that is layered upon layer upon layer of all these different sounds that they have in order to make these worlds feel so real. That, to me, is why we love these movies and why we keep coming back to these movies. And again, when these freaking animated movies, they keep coming out, they keep blowing these live action movies that we know of out of the water, with these incredibly subtle stories, with these characters that are so much better because they can appeal to anybody at all walks of life, because they're meant for kids primarily, but they're still designed by adults, and they make it look easy. And they make it look easy, which, again, to me infuriates me more than anything else, because I'm like, fuck, that makes somebody like me who thinks it's so easy to do this stuff, and then I actually try to do it, and I find out how difficult and how fucking engaging it is, and I have to rack my brain just to get a few words down on paper, and I see this shit, and I'm like, fuck, come on.
This movie reminds me of a Post-it note I'm literally looking at on my computer right now that I want to remind myself of every time I'm working on my script, my album. There's a beauty in minimalism, and simplicity. And this film has that. And sort of to expand that more to the broader scale and maybe the future of this IP, this franchise, I don't know if I want one if they don't give it the same love and care that they gave this film, because I can see this being a huge smash hit. I mean, the reviews are already really great. It's just hard to gauge without theater numbers and all that. It's always going to be tougher this day and age, but at least it seems like the internet's taken to this film, which I think rightfully so. But this film could be tarnished if they make a sequel down the line and it's just half baked, because this film is like a slap in the face to Hollywood. And it's ironic because it's coming from the biggest perpetuator of Hollywood, wherein, this film has staying power for generations because it's what it's based on is the stuff that has been surviving, like we were talking about with Joseph Campbell. That's mythology that's been around for years. Iliad and Odyssey has been around for years because it's still compelling to new readers to this day, because it took the time to flesh out the narrative. Even though it's a long book, you're gonna be hard pressed to argue that there's fat in that book with any scholar or someone who's really read it, right? Because it's just so thought out and so carefully plotted. And so it gives me hope, honestly, for like the future of, big budget cinema and sort of more mainstream, sort of zeitgeisty films. But these films also kind of make me sad because then they're so few and far between. But that's just how brilliant this movie is, that it makes me go to that place in my mind and sort of, comb my brain to sort of figure out the effect that this has on the medium that we love talking about and watching and being a part of so much, entertainment and film, because we watch a lot of movies, we watch a lot of TV, and it comes up sometimes, but at least to me personally, the questions that I'm asking haven't come up in this capacity in quite a while,
Yeah, look, the only thing that I'll say to your point there as to why we only get these movies few and far between is, look, let's be honest, if we got every single movie like this, they wouldn't be a special. That's the only thing that I'll have to say to that is, look, I guess in a weird way I have to thank the amount of bad schlock that we get, because at the very least it makes these types of movies even more special. And before we move on to our next movie, what's it called? The only thing that I had to say is motherfucking Rose Tico, Kelly Marie Tran, crushed it.
Yes.
Crushed it. This is... I mean, again, it's so tricky, and it still pisses me off that voice acting will never get the recognition that it deserves, but this was a voice performance unlike any that I've seen. And this is, again, only 3 months after we saw Jamie Foxx and the incredible job that he did in Soul. And she absolutely knocked it out. Like, there were points in this movie where I really thought that I was just, I wasn't watching an animated character. I was watching... just a real person that was Raya, and just that is all due to Kelly Marie Tran and the absolutely impeccable amount of humanity that she breathed into this character. Like, I loved the amount of kind of world wariness that she had, while still mixed with that sense of childlike idealism that she had tried so hard to bury just based off of her own childhood experiences. It was so awesome, because I think this is the first time I've ever seen a Disney character that's like embittered and jaded. And also, even though, again, I just want to give a quick shout out to this, but Disney definitely, I think, is finally starting to like understand how to do LGBTQ portrayals in film better. Because, dude, I don't know about you, but the chemistry that was brimming between Raya and Namari in this movie was, I'm like, dude, I'm like, that was some like straight up romantic tension right there between those two. And it was really fucking awesome to watch. Like, every single time those two were having a conversation, I'm like, oh man, could you imagine how awesome these two would be together? And then Namari has to go and do some dumb shit, and I'm like, ugh. And I'm like,
yeah.
damn you, like, latest in a long line of Prince Zuko's. You just have to keep doing this next dumb thing and keep fucking it up. Because, like, I really enjoyed her and Raya's relationship throughout. And I'm like, damn it, Disney, you couldn't do it. You couldn't give this to us just this once. You couldn't give it. It's 2021. Come on. Do you have any idea how many people would be beyond stoked if they actually did that? I hate to be that guy, but I'm like, man, when the signs are all there,
No, yeah, their chemistry was, I think, one of the things that instantly hooked me in, and that's also what made that sort of betrayal at the end of the opening sequence all the more powerful. Because yeah, you can tell that there's a little something more there, but yeah, their chemistry it was just cute, man. Like I loved it, it was just so, I don't know, everything about this film was gorgeous, and their chemistry was a big factor in that. So yeah, I'm definitely shipping Ramari.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm going to say to that is my response to that comment, which is I'm not shipping them. Disney shipped and packaged them. I'm just waiting for Tumblr to do its thing. And I feel like that's the perfect point with which to close our discussion on Raya and the Last Dragon. But for star rating, it's not a perfect movie. I think, those modern day sensibilities to me really prevent this from being a perfect movie, but it is still absolutely incredible. Already one of the best movies we've gotten from 2021. Incredible animation, incredible voiceover talent, excellent storytelling. Like, if you want an example of what to do, of how to write a story and do it well, again, just look no further than most of these Disney movies. This is a 4.5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, this film, like I said, it's just so charming. It's so endearing. We need it, honestly, at this point in time. We really do need a film that just sort of says, hey, look past the difference of your neighbor and come together, because there's really, what you're fighting over might not be that much of a division as you think it is. And it's great, man. I loved every second of this film. So yeah, 4.5 stars.
Fuck yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, really, really good movie. Heavily recommend. Like, never in a million years do I advocate giving Disney more money than they already own, but this might be the one time where I'm like, again, I'll never advocate it, but if you're really feeling that to drop that $30 right now instead of waiting until June when it's free, like, I'm not gonna say that you're entirely in the wrong for this one. That is all that I will say to that as far as that goes. So, Chris, let's talk coming to America now. So,
well, I have a quick special announcement, actually, if that's okay
really?
with you.
Really? Yes, please.
Yeah, so we just hit 300 subscribers on this live stream.
Fucking A! Let's go! That's what I'm talking about.
That's all because of you guys, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. That's incredible. I don't think we've done that before. I don't think we've ever hit that in it for like that while we're in the middle of a review. So thank you guys for that. That is truly special. That is something. Wow, that's incredible. Then see, I said we were gonna hit 300 before the end of the week. I didn't realize that was literally gonna equal like before the end of the night. So
tonight, yeah. Well, we still got a show for them tonight, Dom.
Yeah,
we
do. Yeah, we still got more to talk about. Yes, 5 out of 5 for Luke. Yeah, this truly was a special movie. So let's talk Coming to America. So switching gears, obviously, we're talking about now one of the biggest comedy stars of. I'm not going to say the last couple decades because it's definitely safe to say that Eddie definitely dipped in the public conscience, I feel like, after 1989. 1989 was a little bit of a rough year. That 1989 to 1990 spot was a little bit of a rough year for him with the double effort of Harlem Nights and Beverly Hills Cop 3, which is just both of those movies. But, I mean, so this is something I wanted to pick your brain on because this is actually something I don't think we talked about in all the years that we've known each other. Like, just what's your stance on just Eddie Murphy and his movies and his career in general?
Yeah, my dad always plays sort of comedy records in the summer in the garage, and Raw is one of them. So I'm no stranger to that. I actually bought it on vinyl for one of my friends, Jeremy, when he got his first apartment years ago. Jeremy did our Shocktober theme song. That's why I bring him up, because I wanted him to discover something that I thought was just really special and sort of like something different to listen to on his record player, because he's such a musician that's kind of all he is. And I really like Eddie Murphy. I can't say I'm too familiar with everything he's done, but like I've seen, Dr. Dolittle more times than I can count. That was a staple of my childhood. I've, loved, just like so many silly films. Like if I go through and look at like what he's done, of course, the first Coming to America, although I did watch it for this podcast in preparation for the perspective, I really like that film. I added it to my Letterboxd list of favorite movies of all time because I think, of course, it doesn't quite age as well as, the humor is a little 1980s, a little safer. I think that sort of shows how, as a society, we've just gotten more vulgar, honestly. It's still really funny. And it's a nice little time capsule to back then. So Eddie Murphy's a legend. I mean, what more can I say, man? He's one of the, he's the, sixth highest paid actor in Hollywood for a reason, and he didn't work for how many years?
Yeah, like the only thing that I'll say is that, look, Eddie Murphy saved Saturday Night Live when it was in its infancy. I know now Saturday Night Live is just such a behemoth that it's kind of impossible to think of the days in which it would actually be in danger, but Saturday Night Live came very close to being canceled after those first couple of years, and Eddie Murphy came in and single-handedly saved it. Just to give you an idea of how young he was, so he does his first movie in 1982, which is 48 hours, and he's 21 years old. He's 21 years old when he does that movie, and instantly lights up the screen. And then his 80s run after that consists of Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop, which he single-handedly saved because that movie's behind the scenes story is an absolute train wreck. And there are literally points in that movie where there is literally no script and they're just having him riff. And that movie is one of the most beloved comedies of all time. Then he does Then he's got Golden Child. Then Beverly Hills Cop 2, then Coming to America, and then 89 it starts to sink a little bit with him with Harlem Nights and Beverly Hills Cop 3. Then he does Bowfinger, but by the time he gets to like the mid 90s, that's when things start to go a little bit downhill for him. That's when he starts getting into the kids and the family movies with Nutty Professor and Dr. Dolittle. And then once we get to the early 2000s, like with the exception of Shrek, like all his movies are just bombs. But it's really, really fascinating as far as just kind of like when you look at his career overall and how, just how vastly different, like, his 80s is as opposed to his 90s, as opposed to his 2000s. And, again, for the 2010s, a decade that he was largely absent from, with the exception of, I think, he had, 3 major movies, because I know he had the 4th Shrek movie in 2010, and then he had that 1,000 Words movie. And those are, the only 2 big things that I feel like he was in until Dolomite Is My Name. But, just to put this in perspective, it's really hard to compare to anybody today because there just aren't movie stars today the way that there were back in the 80s. but to put this in perspective for all of you kids who, again, were born like 2005 and later, back in the day, before every movie that people talked about was Marvel movies, and before the internet, and back when, the only Star Wars was the original 3 Star Wars movies, when you went to a movie, typically what people did is they would look at the lead actor. And if a movie had one of these 4 people in it in the 1980s, that being Eddie Murphy, Tom Cruise, Sylvester Stallone, or Arnold Schwarzenegger, then you best damn well know that every single person that you knew of was going to watch that movie. Because guess what? If you didn't watch it, then you just weren't in the know. And if you weren't in the know, well, then you went back and watched it. And there's a reason why people would go back and watch these movies over and over and over and over again, because it was just that special. And that was kind of just like, again, the differences of like, kind of pre the internet and of just how movies were perceived. So that's just Eddie Murphy at his career. Now, if we're talking about Coming to America specifically and what that movie accomplishes, I'll agree with you that like definitely some of the humor is still, I guess, safe. But I also think that, again, just for everything that movie does, because the other thing that I loved that Eddie did is just definitely toward the end of the 80s, like when Spike Lee was starting to come up, because I know Spike Lee, even though Spike didn't do the right thing until 1989, Spike was already like becoming well known because like, he was directing he was the guy, he was directing all the some of those early Michael Jordan sneakers commercials, and he was like he was starting to get his name out there within the commercial world. And Spike actually called out Eddie for the fact that it's like, dude, you got this much influence. Keep in mind that this is the 80s, obviously not today. Like, why aren't you doing more for black people in movies? And Spike called him that. And I definitely think that had an effect on Eddie because he was just in such a position of superstardom that I don't think he realized just like the kind of the power that he had. And Coming to America to me is kind of like the first instance where you really start to notice like, wow, this is like the first movie that is really going for like a full-on Afrocentric theme. And even though, again, the movie is a comedy, like everything that movie does, like subject matter wise, I'm still impressed the amount of things that movie is able to get across. And now that we're seeing Eddie in kind of like this late stage of his career that he's in now, kind of, again, he kind of took a break from movies. He was really looking out, he specifically said that he wanted to go for more kiddie-themed fare because, he had kids, but his kids are all grown up now. So now he's in a weird position in his career where he's kind of trying to, I guess, restart it and kind of like get back in tune with what people loved about him in the first place, And so you're starting to see, like, he's starting to like dabble a little bit more into stand-up. He's come back to host SNL a couple of times. And to me, the big, obviously, standout was Dolomite, when he did Dolomite 2 years ago in 2019, because that was really interesting, because that one, in addition to being a biopic, in addition to being, like, this really cool, like, kind of throwback to, what's it called? To, obviously, the blaxploitation era and style of filmmaking in the 1970s, more than anything, it was just a vehicle to show that, yeah, he still got it. But even more than that, it showed that not only does he still got it, but he still got everything that made him Eddie in the 80s, even though he's, 30 years older. Like, you see, like, one of the most impressive things that I loved about every single one of those Eddie Murphy movies from the 80s is that every single bit part actor that maybe had, like, one scene with them went on to have a gigantic career. Like, you have, like, Damon Wayans and Bronson Pinchot and Chris Rock with his one scene in Beverly Hills Cop 2. And you're kind of starting to see that again. We're seeing all these guys who they range from pretty good sitcom stars, like they've made their name, to maybe they've like had to, maybe they used to be famous, but now they've had to overcome some hurdles, to, again, brand new up and coming stars. And I feel like Coming to America now is a vast capitulation of all of that, even if it's not the best movie. Does that make sense? Because I feel like that was kind of another one of my long tangents that I'm not really sure that made a whole lot of sense.
No, it does. Although I think I kind of disagree with you on sort of a naming convention around where Eddie Murphy's at in his career right now. Because I don't think he's looking for a comeback. I definitely think that unless he made some insane financial decisions like a Robert De Niro where COVID not being able to film really hurt him, which we haven't heard that though for Eddie Murphy. I think, if you look up like all these estimated net worths, because I was kind of preparing for this portion of the conversation as well. Some say he's a billionaire. Some say he's at least a 500 millionaire. And that seems to be the general consensus. And, they also keep into account his assets and all of those of which we know are public. Who knows what else he has. So to me, it just seems like passion is what brought him back. because he never had to work again. I mean, he's one of those guys. He's Joe Rogan after
True.
the Spotify deal's
True.
over. In
True.
6 years, Joe Rogan never has to work again. He made $400 million in a day. He owns On It, that company. He's just one of those kind of guys, once, like you say, a once in a life, a generation talent. And so to me, it kind of just seems like it was really just out of passion. So that's why I don't think this is a perfect film, but I also can't fault it too much because, I don't see someone who's trying to, oh shit, I bought too many houses. Okay, I got to do something fast. Okay, Coming to America 2, that's going to put some dough in my pocket. No, this seems like this could have come out 2 years after and it would have been the same film because it just seems like passion when I watch this movie.
Yeah, he's not pulling a Johnny Depp or Nicolas Cage and just doing all these shitbox movies in order to pay for all the money that he's sunk into like a private island or something like that. Like he's not doing that.
Right, and we don't know that for sure, but I feel like I have a good radar for when someone's trying to grab some cash as opposed to when someone's really in there for the love and they missed their art and they missed what brought them life. And to me, that's what these recent Eddie Murphy appearances feel like.
Yeah,
all subjective.
No, most definitely, because that to me was the big takeaway. Now, if we're gonna dive into now Coming to America, which is that
let's do
it. So Craig Brewer, who directed Dolomite Is My Name, also the director of Hustle and Flow, and a couple of other kind of really underrated but really interesting and awesome movies from the late 2000s and early 2010s. They announced that the next movie, while they were doing the press for Dolomite, that their next movie was going to be a Coming to America sequel. And of course, again, what's the first thought? Again, oh no, why are they doing this? Because if there's one thing that the 2010s demonstrated, it was that every single comedy sequel that came out 10 or 12 years after the original sucked. Anchorman 2, Zoolander 2, Dumb and Dumber, like all these comedies, it's like, bro, why? Just why? Like, the actors are visibly older. Sure, like, they might be having fun on set, but like, there's just the magic is not there, But Eddie is one of the few people that he is just so unrelentingly charming that really he could just make anything work, because from the opening shot of this movie, again, I thought a really clever recreation of kind of the opening shot of the last one, only with CG. And the minute that Eddie steps on screen, it's like, yeah, no, this is Hakeem, and he hasn't lost a wink of it, a wink of his charm, a wink of his talent, a wink of his ridiculously endearing personality, like in the last now 33 years since the movie's been released. And what I'll say about the movie itself is that the movie itself probably comes off to me like a series of SNL sketches. I don't particularly think the tension works all the time per se, and I don't think that the narrative drive per se is like necessarily like you feel it all the time. But also, that's not the type of movie that this is. This isn't the type of movie where you need that. It's not the type of movie where this is needed. This is a movie where they wanted to get together and they wanted to make this movie and they wanted to have as much fun as possible while doing it. And to me, that's exactly what they accomplished, because there is not a single moment in this movie where I cannot tell that every single actor involved here is just having the time of their freaking lives. And it shows, because from the minute that Wesley Snipes enters and he's doing that dumb little dance to freaking Arsenio Hall doing the latest of his 15 bug of like eyes popping out of his sockets, to all the different ridiculous characters that come back, and that's just Eddie and Arsenio and all of that, still really freaking awesome makeup, and even kind of like the more modernistic sensibilities that, again, I thought was going to torpedo it, like Tracy Morgan and Leslie Jones doing their latest comedy shticks, but it all just worked, and it all just kind of serviced the plot. And even though, like, again, I'm like, I understand that what I'm watching is not incredibly important, like, who cares? Just, this is just literally the definition of just sit back, watch it, have some laughs, enjoy it, understand it's not taking itself too seriously, so we don't need to take it too seriously.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. And there are a few points that I kind of want to dive in and sort of elaborate on, because, yeah, the narrative isn't the most compelling. I think what one thing the first film really did well was, I mean, it was plot centric in the best way possible. You really understood his motivations. And the first film kind of felt more like a movie, more like a romantic style movie, rather than this sort of, I think, like you said, felt more like a passion project that was a little more, I don't want to say avant-garde, but it sort of borders more of that relaxed artistic feel of someone who's a comedic creator, rather than like we're making a movie, we're making a sequel movie. So I kind of feel that totally. And it's funny though, because usually that's a big issue for me, but it really wasn't here. And someone else who's usually a big issue for me is Leslie Jones. I just don't find her sort of bag funny. The only thing I find funny is that one SNL skit where de Blasio legalized weed back in 2014. And fun fact, that's actually, Jeremy's coming up a lot tonight. That was his street they shot it on. And I remember him being really upset because he had to come upstate for 3 weeks because he couldn't get into his apartment. He couldn't park. So he's like, I'm not getting a ticket. I'm not getting towed. But that, like, she screams, de Blasio, baby. And it's like the only thing I've ever seen her do that's funny. And it was so early on in her career at SNL that I was like, oh, I'm really excited for this young SNL cast. They kind of all went on to let me down. But this film just knows it knows itself so well that everyone in this film is great in it. Like, she is hilarious in this movie. Like, I never thought I would laugh at a single thing she's done. And here I am wanting more screen time of her, and she's all over the damn thing. And same thing with, like, you know, Jermaine Fowler. Like, he is awesome in this film. Granted, you know, he's really the only bit of plot we have. Eddie Murphy's kind of off doing whatever he's doing. Really just pop culture references that they know are sort of the best of what's happened since he's been away. And I love how the moments they chose where what they did, like the on fleek thing, sort of that Mean Girls thing coming back, or sorry, Pitch Perfect thing coming back. And then the Wakanda reference was amazing. I mean, you knew it was coming. So I knew it was going to come. Because when I was watching the first one, I was expecting the barbershop people, like when they were talking about Muhammad Ali and he changes his name, I was expecting like that would have been where they would have done that. And they did that, which was awesome. So like, that's why I say like Eddie Murphy to me isn't on a comeback. He's just on a passion trip, you know, because that's what I get from this film.
No, yeah, you're 100% right. And oh man, so, some of the jokes that are in this movie, like I was doing I was doing a lot of eye rolling because yes, they were all obvious and you knew that they were gonna make them, but the people that he got are just so damn talented that it's like, yeah, of course they're gonna land. Like freaking when Arsenio Hall actually added a new character to the litany of characters that he was playing, because in addition to the one barbershop guy and the crazy preacher and what's it called, those are the only two characters he brought back. He actually played a new character in the form of what is it, the King's Royal Advisor, who literally looked like they were going for a human version of Rafiki from The Lion King. Like I am dead serious when I say that. That's almost like they were intentionally going for that look there, and it was, everything he said was just absolutely ridiculous. Like right from the opening explanation of how they explain to Eddie Murphy that he has a bastard son, and then you just see Arsenio Hall trying to creep out, and then he turns around and Eddie Murphy's recounting the night, and then you see the realization. I'm like, all that stuff, I'm like, yeah, I'm used to it. I've seen this stuff before, but it's still so fucking funny when it actually happens. And like the minute that Eddie's like all the different references, like still to me. Also, one of the most brilliant things that the original Coming to America did was the really clever reference to Trading Places, when they had the two old men characters from Trading Places come back as themselves, as these two homeless guys that he unintentionally just throws the money to, and then they brilliantly pay that off.
That was awesome.
Like, it was so great. And like, again, you knew every joke and you knew everything that was coming, but it was still like what is it? Explain that to me. Like, why is it that another movie can do it and they can put in all these obvious jokes and they don't work and it tanks the movie, and then you have this movie where it kind of doesn't really care about the story and the jokes carry it? Like what is it? Is it just Eddie? Is it just like kind of the supernatural aura that he just has around it that instantly makes everything funny and charming and relatable?
I think it's what everyone feels about Dave Chappelle nowadays. You know, there's once in a generation talents, and unfortunately those genes are one in a million, and Eddie Murphy has that. And it just shows, like Paul McCartney gets better with age. You know, Eddie Murphy just seems to be a wine that can age unlimited, and you don't ever want to open the bottle because you're going to deprive yourself of what's to come if you choose to. Eddie Murphy is to creation as far as artistically goes as to what the apple is to Adam and Eve. Like, don't pluck it. You want that thing to be on the tree for as long as possible, because if you pluck it, all hell's going to break loose, and we don't want to deprive ourselves of his talent. Like, yeah, you know, it wasn't his strongest outing, but also it wasn't meant to be. And I think if you can see it like that, then you totally understand that this kind of feels like a passing of the torch to some amazing younger talent from some amazing older talent, you know, not just Arsenio Hall and not just Eddie Murphy. I mean, come on, Wesley Snipes, Morgan Freeman, the list goes on. I mean, this is just
James Earl Jones coming back for two scenes.
James Earl Jones. This is just, it's important to me, like for sort of the future of getting comedies back into the zeitgeist,
Yes.
which is something we kind of talk about on the show a lot. And I think this movie, I'm really glad it happened. Usually I war against sequels, just because I think with comedy sequels, you fall into that trap of it having to be familiar. So how much can you expand with the joke format? Will you take away from the magic that you originally had getting those butts in the seats? I feel like there is a bit of a conundrum there. But I thought they handled it well. The only thing it kind of missed for me was a little more plot. And can I just say one last thing before I hand it off to you? You were talking about Arsenio Hall, and I don't want to get too far away from that. You know, I wanted more of him in this film until I realized that he was all over the film. But then I realized, well, why did I feel that way in the first place? And it's because Semi and Akeem's relationship in that first film is just so charming and so driving. It literally has a heartbeat where you don't want it to stop, and you don't get that much of that in this film. You kind of get him pairing off in a new sort of relationship with the uncle, and it's good, but I think it's also because he hasn't been around in pop culture. He was more of a talk show guy, from my understanding, for years. And so that was unfortunate. But then, like, I also think the fact that he left me wanting more is a good sign, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more, honestly. It's so funny because you're right, because that relationship between those two in that first movie was such a driving force. Like, to me, like, as much as I do love Eddie in that first movie, like, to me, I kind of like Arsenio more, because Arsenio is doing just as much as Eddie as far as, like, with playing the different characters, and he's going, like, all over. He's arguably going harder than Eddie in some scenes. It's almost like they're trying to, like, out ridiculous each other. Like, first with Eddie is the one barbershop guy, and then Arsenio is that fucking insane preacher, and then Eddie comes out with the sexual chocolate thing, and then but then Arsenio is like the dude in drag who says that she wants to eat Eddie for breakfast.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
I'll say here too that I think that also, though, another reason why I think he was better in the first movie was that in the first movie, he let his insanity come out with those other characters, and that allowed his performance as Semi to seem more grounded, because, like, with the exception of a few sequences, like, Semi is still, like, very, very grounded, and he is, like, a realistic character. In this movie, it's almost like he knows that he has a lot less screen time, so it's almost like he's trying to overcompensate for that by, like, with his performance as Semi, like, now Semi's ridiculous too, and, like, Semi still has some funny moments, and he's still Semi, but there are definitely moments there where I'm like, okay, I feel like you're, like, this is something that, like, 30 years ago, Semi would not be doing, But I mean, if there's one thing that this movie told me, it's that, besides the fact that Eddie still got it, it's the fact that we desperately need more Arsenio Hall in movies, and we desperately need more Wesley Snipes in movies, because you were talking about Arsenio Hall. Wesley Snipes, again, just like in Dolomite Is My Name, is only in a couple scenes of this movie, but you know that when he shows up on screen, he is going to do everything in his power to make sure that he is the center of attention, and goddamn does he do that. Like, again, like any other actor, they would be this would be overacting. This would be overacting, and this would be considered ridiculous and silly. But Wesley, man, oh my God, like,
for sure. No, he played the
Like,
part perfectly.
I don't get it. Like, what is it about these guys that makes this shit work?
So, I mean, there's actually many books and sort of theories written about they're called hotspots, creative hotspots throughout history. Shakespearean times, Shakespeare and his troupe of actors sort of being some of the best to immortalize his legacy in a time before, really vast print and the internet to send things out to the airwaves. There had to be something special there. And it's the same thing with, George Lucas, Martin Scorsese, and, Steven Spielberg all growing up together. And I actually think even Coppola was in that bunch.
Yep.
When you have people who might not be there yet, but have this thing in them, this it factor that just needs to find the limelight, there's something special in the sense that, and what I'm getting at is, I think all of these guys push each other. So I think in these scenes, even though this film, and this is kind of my last sentiment, because I don't want to overanalyze this film to take away from how special it is, but to answer your question, I think because they're so talented, this not only is proving that, like, yeah, we still have it. We just took some time off, and now we're back. But I think
Wesley's case
this is what you
too.
Like, I'm not, well, yeah, but whatever.
Pay your taxes, people. That's all we gotta say. Pay your taxes.
Right. But what I was gonna say is, like, I think this is every director's dream, where your actors are just they're not there for the paycheck. At this point, none of those guys need it. None of the big three need it. I mean,
No.
they're legends. They're Hollywood royalty. And so this is just artistic competition in the best way, where it's collaborative and it's creative, and it's forcing them to bring the best out in the other person. So that's why I think, even though he's not in this film that much, it's always so special when he's on the screen, because then you see the young actors come to life, and you see even the extras in these two movies are like better than most. And
Yep.
I think it's just, there are just certain moments in time where all the creative stars line up, and talent is talent, and talent will do what talent does.
Yeah, I hope, I think my big takeaway from this, again, because you're right, I don't want to talk too much longer because I don't want to kind of overanalyze this to death and do that internet thing. I have to say that I hope that this movie does for this batch of young actors what all of Eddie's old movies did for like all those actors that like had one scene. Because again, Chris Rock had one scene in Beverly Hills Cop 2 in, what's it called? Like where he's the parking valet. And then he goes up and he fucking crushes it with his first stand-up special, like his first big stand-up special a couple years later in the early 90s. So I just hope that for all these young, like Jermaine Fowler and Kiki Lane and a couple of these other younger actors that have been like trying to make it on the up and up, I hope that these guys all blow up after this movie, because this movie showed that they've got it. And again, just anybody who attaches themselves to Eddie, like it's like they all know. They know that Eddie is just a creative hotspot unlike any other. And when you get this group of people together, it doesn't matter if the movie's not the best, you still just know you're going to get a creative surge unlike any other. So again, while some of the jokes didn't work for me, I certainly think that there were parts that they just kind of left the plot behind, and they're just focusing on other movies. Like it starts off with Eddie Murphy, and then it's like focuses for the entire second half is on Jermaine Fowler, and then they bring in Tracy Morgan for a bit, and then by the end it's back on Eddie Murphy. You know, like I said, I don't necessarily think that this movie is the best example when it comes to structure, but as far as, again, just seeing a bunch of people who you know are still at the top of their game getting together and just having an absolute blast and taking you on an absolutely entertaining joyride, this is that movie. Again, I don't think it's a perfect movie, and for that, I'm only giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars. That sounds really low. I admit, it does sound really low, but again, like this movie would have had to like really been like this, or it's like, whoa, okay, this movie would have had to been like blow me out of the water for it to be a 4-star level, you know? So that's why I'm only giving it 3.5, but I still very much enjoyed what I saw.
Yeah, totally. I'm right there with you. I think just my sort of better judgment and promise to myself as a critic stops me from giving this 4 stars, even though I really would like to, because it is very charming. I do think it's still lacking a little bit, but I think that comes with the territory of this, in my opinion, being just a pursuit of passion. And if you watch it, great, but Eddie Murphy just wanted to simply make this, it seems, and if you see it, that's just a bonus for him. His part's done. He expressed himself, and so you also can't hate on that too much. So that's why I'm going to hit it at, again, with you, 3.5 stars. It's just one of those types of films, but that's a shame, because this kind of harkens back to our debate on my birthday stream about art and rating and ranking art.
Yeah.
Where sometimes you just don't want to have to do it, and this is one of those situations for me personally.
Honestly, again, it's wishful thinking, I know, but I do hope we get to a point where we don't have to. Part of our, again, just our the YouTube sphere and what it's done to movies is, again, we don't have to just rank and rate and what has to be better than what, and what is better and what is objective. Like, I just hope we get to the point where none of that is a thing anymore. We could just watch a movie and enjoy it for what it is and appreciate the storytelling. Again, whether it's good or bad, or whether those terms even exist, we could just appreciate it for what it is and just incorporate it into the canon of stories that we have. And that's kind of like, I guess, for lack of a better word, what I want the goal of this podcast to be is to break down storytelling, understand what makes the good stories versus what makes the stories that don't work, and then just learn to enjoy and appreciate them. I feel like if that's the takeaway to me from both of these movies overall. And again, as it turns out, they weren't the only movies that came out this past weekend. Again, Joe Carnahan's Boss Level, which from what I heard is another Groundhog's Day-esque movie, but it's an action movie starring Frank Grillo. So I'm definitely going to check that out on Hulu also afterwards. So yeah, this is a big weekend for movies, to say the least, and it makes me happy. It definitely makes me positive as far as the future of movies go, especially just after, again, the depressing year that was 2020. It's still good to know that not only do we get some great movies, but we get some movies that we can still enjoy, because as Patrick H. Willems said, we need to give the okay movies their time, because not every movie can be great, but there can still be those movies that you just turn on to enjoy. And that to me was this movie, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I totally agree with everything you just said there in regards to what my hope and dreams for the podcast are. I share that with you 100%. And all I'll say is, hey, we're 300 more subscribers closer to achieving that than we ever were.
Yes,
So
indeed.
it's all because of you guys, man.
Only 700 away from 1,000 now. And guess what? In a couple months' time, that number is going to look like small potatoes. That is the only thing that I am going to say. So with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in to yet another double feature. We're probably going to have a lot more of these going forward, just with the amount of like double releases that are going to be happening with movies going forward, especially again with the massive compounding of delayed releases from last year going into the movies that were originally going to be released this year. We've got more Netflix movies coming out. We've got so much stuff to talk about again. So I'm putting up my top 10 Disney animated movies, original Disney animated movies on Wednesday in order to bounce off of both Raya and The Last Dragon, and also my top 10 Pixar movies that came out originally. I got some interesting choices on there because again, there are a lot more Disney animated movies than there are Pixar movies, and everyone's got their favorites, but I would definitely say that I've got some unique choices, to say the least. So stay tuned to that, definitely. You guys are not going to want to miss that. And of course, on Friday, we've got our 300 subscriber. Again, thanks to everyone who made that possible tonight, / 1 year anniversary.
Yeah.
Yes. Live stream that will be on this coming Friday at 8 p.m. Again, it's just going to be me and Chris. We're going to be going live. We're going to be just chilling and chatting, talking about some things going on in the world. And again, with some of our favorite shows and stuff, what we're looking forward to for the rest of the year. Maybe clue you guys in as to some stuff that we've got coming up for the next couple months. Like, it's going to be fun. It's just going to be a fun time, you know? And you're definitely going to want to tune in for the next couple weeks. We've got a lot of stuff, as always, coming out. And Chris, what can they do in order to find out more about the stuff that we've got coming out?
Yeah, if they want to sort of join us week to week as we cover, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and sort of not fold to the pressure of the, peer pressure of how to cover Disney online, then they can do that on youtube.com/Talkin TV. We go live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or we post a video every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Either way, we will be there in some way, shape, or form, and we really appreciate you guys subscribing, and we hope you continue to subscribe, as well as on anywhere that matters in regards to the vast array of social media sites, at Talkin TV Podcast. Talkin spelled Talkin. It's right there below me. You cannot miss it. We post a lot, guys, and we've been posting some pretty dynamite clips lately. A lot of them involving our good friend AJ Reacts 2, but we still have had a lot of good clips going on lately. So you're definitely going to want to follow us over there and keep up to date with us is all I'm going to say in regards to that.
Yes, most definitely. And again, if you guys just want to keep supporting us, again, we made it to 300 subscribers in just this one video alone. But if you want to keep supporting us, again, click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the bell next to it. That way you guys get notified every time we put up new content. Leave a comment below. Also, let us know different types of new stuff that you guys would like to see. Again, we're always looking to expand our kind of YouTube array as far as the different variety of content that we put out, and we can only do that with suggestions based on you guys. So once again, this is my annual calling out the chat segment. Give us some suggestions as to future videos that you want from us. And of course, just as far as where you can find us personally, I know Chris has got some music that he's been working on. I listened to some of the tracks when I was over at his house the other night, and all that I'm going to say is that you guys are not ready, because I don't think that this type of music has been put out in a mainstream way ever, frankly, except for kind of smaller artists that maybe might get recognized and have their stuff put on movies. But Chris, where can the good people follow you in order to find out and see that music when it eventually gets released?
Yeah, it seems like the chat really liked the double lists. Hey,
Yes.
we're listening, Dom. They're finally giving you what you want.
We are indeed listening, and we are. Well, let's just say that we've got some stuff planned as far as that goes. So stay tuned is all I have to say to that.
Right, and as Dom alluded to, and thanks again for the compliments, man. I appreciate it. I'm just having fun with it, but yeah, I have some stuff as well that I would like for you guys to keep your eyes and ears peeled to. I'm working on my debut solo record. I mean, I guess really not debut. I have a solo record, but this is a new style of music, so it's going to garner a new name, and it's going to have a whole new alias associated with it. There's a screenplay now that's coming down the pipeline for it, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. I'm for once finally fusing all of my loves, and it's not even done yet, and I just feel so much happier as a person. So at Christian Evanko, Evanko spelled Evanko, the link to that will be in the description. Scroll all the way to the bottom of our descriptions, and you can find both of our personals, and I'd very much so appreciate you guys following me there for updates on my project, just sort of general life things, and all my other sort of musical endeavors. That's the place to be. And Dom, you have social media as well, don't you?
I do have social media, but again, I mostly reserve it for just like making sarcastic comments and kind of, just doing the usual social media thing. I don't use it as probably as much as I should, but that's only because I don't feel like I have enough individual creative endeavors, because pretty much everything creative I pretty much post on the Talkin TV channel. But if you guys want, you can follow me on at Movie Nerd Reviews on Facebook and Instagram. And the only thing that I really have left to say before we get out of here is you know it, 12 seasons in a short film. And, in this case, now that we actually have some movies to watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.